well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. This is a program where we talk a lot about the right to keep and bear arms. And today we're going to be talking about Republicans who don't want to talk a lot about the right to keep and bear arms. In fact, they want to talk about it at all, even though they are running for office. Our friend Carl Higbie going to be with us momentarily talking about a situation in Connecticut. But this is something that we're actually seeing, I think, around the country, where some Republicans are, certainly this isn't the case with every Republican candidate, but there are some folks out there, I think, on the right, who are taking the gun owner vote for granted. And they just assume that, well, I've got an R after my name. Who else are the gun owners going to vote for? They got to go vote for that gun grabbing Democrat? No, not necessarily. They might choose not to vote at all. However, if you don't give them a reason to show up at the polls or to go knock on doors, it's not even just a matter of voting. It's about doing that voter outreach. And again, we'll talk about that. But you know what? We should even delay. Let's just get right to the conversation with Mr. Carl Higbie, a retired Navy SEAL, current Newsmax host, talking about what's going on in a special election there in the nutmeg state of Connecticut. Take a look and a listen. Carl, thanks so much for joining me, sir. It's good talking with you today.
Well, it's good to be back on the program, Cam.
You know what? I got to say, I really thought this was a very interesting column at the Greenwich Free Press. You guys have a special election going on, but I think this is applicable, frankly, to gun owners and Republicans all across the country, because, you make the case that the GOP, particularly there in Connecticut, is taking gun owners for granted. I mean, you've got this special election for the state legislature, and the Republican candidate is not even... He doesn't even mention the Second Amendment on his campaign website. And you say this is not only going against what this candidate himself told you, but this is turning off a lot of gun owners and making them apathetic about getting involved and being engaged, because, what's the point? If they're going to go out there, why should they go out there and support a candidate that's not going to be supportive of them?
Right. And this, this is obviously a national issue. This is not local. I just wrote it in my local paper because I was actually going to run for this seat, Cam, and I did the calculations, and I felt like this guy, Ryan Fazio, was a better candidate to win the general election because he had run the race before. He lost by like 200 votes. And so I was like, okay, this is a very close election. We had a sudden resignation from the entrenched Democrat. You take this reins. You have all the data. You have the network. You know how to do this. Go ahead. You're the better guy. And I was like, cool. My next question was, how can I help? And this is what a lot of Republicans do. This is what a lot of gun owners do. Gun owners are like some of the most active people in politics. Mm-hmm. I mean, we put the signs in our yard, the stickers on our car. We donate to the campaigns. I'm a national TV news host. I'm going door to door for local candidates, knocking on doors because I want to help save my town. And, I'm on the town council in my hometown as well. But one of the things that I talked to him about, I said, look, I can't support you unless you're pro 2A. 100% Carl, I was like, I need you to be public about it because I'm going to get the gun owners of the town, which, keep in mind, in a town of 60,000 people, there's about probably close to a quarter of the town is gun owners. I mean, that's a staggering statistic in Connecticut, but It's true. And so that means if 25% of the population, and this race was basically a 50-50 race, that makes 50% of the Republican electorate gun owners. And he won't come out. He refused to say publicly. He says, no, Carl, I can't. He's running against one of the lead chapters of Moms Demand Action. She's from California, funded nationally. I mean, I was like, dude, this is low-hanging fruit. No. So I said, look, dude, I got to say my piece. And it's egg on my face because I went out, I called hundreds of people in the district, gun owners, MAGA folks, and I said, you need to go vote for this guy, Ryan Fazio. All of them were like, the guy's got no guns. He's got no gun permit. He doesn't know anything about guns, and I can't find anything anywhere on the record of him ever being pro-gun. I said, trust me, he is. And a lot of them came back and says, no, I'm out. This guy refuses to put out a statement. So I got egg on my face. I call, and the guy's a nice enough guy. He's a good kid. The same age, a little bit younger than me. But the greater issue is, he said to me, the gun owners are going to turn out and vote for me anyway. And the GOP nationally, I've sat in tons of campaigns where the GOP nationally believes the same thing. Oh, we're going to get the gun owners vote no matter what. No, not anymore. because we feel like we've been left in the dust.
Yeah, you're right. And it's not necessarily a matter of, okay, well, I'm going to go for the Democrat now. It's,
right.
Well, I'm not going to go vote. I'm going to stay home. I'm going to vote for Libertarian. I'm going to cast a third-party protest vote. You're right. I think that there is a sense, and part of it is because, of our polarized electorate. The vast majority of Democrats support gun control. The vast majority of Republicans, at least vote in favor of the Second Amendment. But you're right. It's not enough to just assume that those gun owners are going to vote for you because you've got an R after your name. You actually got to demonstrate, look, I'm going to work for you. I'm going to represent you, and your voice and your rights matter. I mean, particularly, as you say, in this particular case where the Democrat who's running is a Moms Demand Action volunteer. I mean, look, that makes gun control an issue. And, I realize it's Connecticut. You've probably got some voters who are Republicans who aren't gun owners, who maybe aren't big fans of the Second Amendment. I don't really care about that. You've still got to reach out and say, look, whether you like it or not, this is a constitutionally protected right. And I'm going to make sure that people can actually exercise that right. I believe it's wrong to try to strip people of their rights, to try and infringe on that right with the false promise of public safety. There are ways, I think, to approach this issue that don't just appeal to gun owners, that can even resonate with non-gun owners when you're talking about the importance of the right to keep and bear arms. But if you're not willing to have that conversation, if you're not willing to have that discussion, then why on earth should you expect that gun owners are going to show up and turn out for you at the polls?
Well, and the bigger issue to this is the culture of what Democrats have done to gun culture. Mm-hmm. Democrats have beaten Republicans down so badly to make even Republicans, like lightweight Republicans, believe that guns are associated with crime. Not bad guys, but the actual firearm itself. Now, I told this guy, I said, look, Ryan, like I said, nice enough guy, but he was totally misguided, younger kid, but by a series of inside political party politics where it's like, you can't touch the gun thing. I said, Ryan, you are just releasing a statement the statement that I wanted him to put out was, I will never cast a vote to take lawfully owned firearms from law-abiding citizens. Not exactly marching in a parade with a machine gun.
Right.
And and I said, look, you are supporting the Second Amendment that has been upheld by the Supreme Court in, reinforcing Article 1, Section 15 of the Connecticut Constitution in the Constitution state. You're not exactly making a crazy statement here. And, after all this, the op-ed comes out, it goes viral, melted down the homepage of the local paper. And because it was read nationally as well. And then he comes, they ask him about it, and he goes, oh, of course, I'm strongly behind the Second Amendment. I was like, dude, was it that hard? All you had to do was say that right out the gate. But now you got all this negative press 5 days before the election, and I'm not sure if he can recover from it.
Yeah, and again, that seems to be a problem of his own devising. I went to Fazio's website. Still no mention of the Second Amendment anywhere that I can find. And I mean, to get back to your point about gun owners being taken for granted here, it's fascinating to me, Carl, that while you've got this Republican running for a state Senate seat in California, one of the leading Democrats who's vying to replace Gavin Newsom in California as governor, I just wrote about this yesterday, he actually says that California's gun control laws are causing more harm than good. He says he wants to see California become a shall-issue state. Now, if there are Democrats who are willing to buck their party and say, all right, you know what, I'm going to take a more pro-Second Amendment view, and I still have my issues with some of this guy's positions, but it's definitely a more pro-Second Amendment view than you hear from a typical California Democrat. Well, why on earth are Republicans in Connecticut scared to say the same thing or to stand up for the Second Amendment? Do you really think that there are some party politics involved here, that you got higher ups within the GOP in Connecticut and again, probably a lot of other blue states too, say, look, the way to appeal to those moderate voters is to, talk about or just not even talk about common sense gun safety laws, but just to stay silent, just to keep mum when it comes to the Second Amendment.
Well, what's interesting is they believe that. And the problem is our party, especially in Greenwich, Connecticut, I mean, it's run by a bunch of rich old white dudes, okay? And it sounds bad to say that, but it is. I mean, the Democratic Party is run by the same thing in Greenwich because it's Greenwich, Connecticut. But, they're not much, they're not, at least the Republicans are better than them. But however, the issue is most of the party leadership, they're not gun owners. So they don't understand.
Yep.
And they're not, they don't go to the range. It's not in their culture because they've grown up and working in Manhattan or whatever it may be. So guns have never been a part of their culture. And that's okay. But don't lecture someone like me who used a gun for overseas for the better part of a decade defending freedom that it's not an important issue because I've seen what happens when people take that away. The bigger issue is the calculation. The sheer math of this doesn't make sense. If you have 50% of the Republican electorate as gun owners, you should definitely pay attention. I mean, you should pay attention to that day in and day out. You should keep them happy because they, like I said earlier, they're the base that you need to have turnout, especially in a special election. However, in Connecticut, we are one of the fastest growing permit issuing states right now in America, 2-1 for women. That should tell you that, the target audience where they say the moderate voter,
yep.
They talk about the soccer mom. That's what they always use as the example. Guess what? Soccer moms, 2-1 are becoming armed in the state of Connecticut across the board, Democrat or Republican.
Yeah, and again, I mean, Republicans, I think both parties ignore that at their own peril. But, there are also, I think, some Connecticut-specific issues that we just saw the Connecticut Citizens Defense League file an emergency motion trying to block or trying to restore, rather, the ability to purchase a firearm because the Connecticut State Police did this supposed upgrade to their fingerprinting system that ended up shutting down gun sales for at least 2 weeks. I don't even know if they've got it entirely resolved yet. We also saw Governor Lamont do the same thing last year, shutting down fingerprinting services, which meant that people could not get their permits. And you need that permit in Connecticut to buy a gun, right? It's not just that you can buy one and carry one as long as you have that permit, but you got to have that permit in order to do either one of those things.
Cam, you need a permit to buy ammunition in Connecticut.
Yeah. So again, there are some specific issues here, I think, that are impacting those Connecticut residents who would like to become gun owners for the first time and can't because of the barriers that the state is putting in place. Again, I mean, that's a small gun. That's not just a pro-gun argument. That's a small government argument. That is a good government argument. That is a transparent government argument. There are ways to talk about these things that I think would resonate with people who really aren't even gun owners. But if you're too afraid to have that conversation, you can't be surprised if gun owners are unmotivated to turn out at the polls.
Yeah, and in an election, like I said, especially this is a special election, so turnout's bad historically. However, in an election where he lost only by about 200 votes last go around, you have 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 like really hardcore gun owners in Greenwich, Connecticut. I know that seems like that's shockingly high to some people, but it really is. Every single person on my 44-person street in Greenwich, Connecticut, backcountry Greenwich, Connecticut, owns a gun with the exception of one family. Every single one. That statistic right there should tell you, like, hey, maybe don't come out like being some gun nut, but just say, hey, look, I'm never going to take your guns. That's all we want.
Absolutely. I'm even in favor of being a little bit of a gun nut, even in Greenwich, Connecticut. Push those boundaries. But
I'm totally gun.
So I'm curious, as one gun nut to another. You write in your piece at the Greenwich Free Press that you don't plan on voting for Fazio. You're not going to take part in this election. You're going to send a message here. Is there anything that he could say between now and election day next Tuesday that would convince you? All right, fine. I'll go ahead and cast my vote for you, despite your reluctance to talk about the Second Amendment. Or is that decision locked in stone?
No, if he marched in and got started the process to get his carry permit, I would vote for him, and I would get back on the phone with all 400 plus people that I called and said, "Look, this guy is trying to make it right. Go get it." But the thing is I'm just my concern, Cam, and this is not local. This is national.
Mm-hmm.
These guys they have no commitment to the Second Amendment, and they go to wherever they go, Hartford, they go to D.C., they go to the Capitol, Sacramento in California, wherever they go. And, if they're unwilling to even talk about an issue on the campaign trail because it might be sensitive and affect their reelection, guess what the Democrats are going to do? They're going to put a gun bill up to vote 2-3 months before the next election and call it something dumb like gun safety. And then he's going to have to vote for it because he's going to be, I can't be seen voting against gun safety, whichever, and they could say like guns are banned altogether and that's their gun safety bill. But that's how the Democrats do it. And Republicans just don't stand up to it because we've sent guys there. Like the previous guy who held the seat who was a Republican, we sent him there. He voted for the 1160 bill, the post-Sandy Hook bill, which basically, so we've seen this in Republican politics in Connecticut for years. They say, oh, I'm a constitutionalist. That's their out. And then they get there and they vote against the Second Amendment every single time.
Well, listen, I got to say, I don't know what the results of this special election are going to be, but I am glad that you're speaking up about this issue because you're right. It is not just happening locally there in the state Senate district. This is, I think, a phenomena that we are seeing around the country. And as we head into the midterms, again, voter turnout is going to be absolutely critical if we want to end the threat of a gun ban in Congress and confine that threat to the executive branch. And that means we've got to have candidates who are vocal about supporting our right to keep and bear arms and not just, insinuating that they'll vote the right way as long as we elect them to office.
But they can be just as vocal as saying, hey, if you don't want to own a gun, that's cool, too.
Absolutely. But again, I want them to talk about these issues. I would have no problem whatsoever with the candidate saying, listen, if you don't want to own a gun, I'm not going to make you own a gun. Okay, that's fine. We have our freedom to make that choice. But I do want a candidate who can talk about these things in a way, that shows that they're comfortable talking about it, right? And not just parroting talking points that their campaign staff has come up with. And that means that if you're not a gun owner yourself and you're a candidate, you do need to talk with gun owners. You need to spend some time understanding their concerns, understanding the big issues, because I will say it's one thing to just remain silent on these issues. It's another thing to come off as false or phony when you're talking about these issues. So that's another problem entirely.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Just be genuine about it. And if he comes, look, the guy doesn't have a permit. If he says, look, guys, I don't know anything about guns, but I'm certainly not going to vote to take them from you.
Again,
I'm in.
Right.
I'm in. I'm knocking on doors for you.
That would be an honest statement. And as a gun owner, I could appreciate that. And that gives me something to work with. But like you said, running away from the issue. Yeah, don't be surprised if voters end up running away from you. Carl, as always, sir, fantastic talking with you. Do you know enough about Saturday's show to give us a preview about what we can expect to see on Newsmax?
Well, we're going to be discussing some of this stuff, but one of the craziest things that I've seen is this whole Russian PP hoax that the Democrats perpetuated against Donald Trump for so long. It may actually be true, only it wasn't Donald Trump, it was Hunter Biden. You can't make this stuff up, Kim.
No, you really can't. Not when it comes to Hunter Biden. And you can't ignore the disinterest on the part of most media outlets, which would not be the case if his name was Hunter Trump. Carl, listen, man, I'm really looking forward to checking out the show on Saturday. What time are you on Newsmax on Saturdays?
9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also tonight, not tonight, but Friday night, I'll be hosting for Greg Kelly at 7 p.m. on Newsmax. And we're going to talk more about this gun issue on there. I got some great guests for it.
Excellent. All right. Looking forward to that. Carl Higbie, thank you so much, sir. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you soon. I appreciate Carl joining us on the program. Let's get to today's Armed Citizen story, our good deed of the day. And our recidivist report, and this is not really a pure recidivism report because this is actually a first offense. But, we've seen in the wake of the murder of Ella French, a Chicago police officer, there's been a lot of talk about straw purchases because apparently the gun that was used by these two brothers who were not allowed to possess firearms, they got that gun through a straw buy. Basically, one of their buddies who lives in Indiana went and purchased a firearm at retail, lied on the 4473 form that he had to fill out, saying that he was the actual buyer. The gun was intended for him. That wasn't the case. It was intended for one of these brothers. And the Chicago Superintendent of Police, David Brown, incensed that a federal judge has let this accused straw buyer be released on bond, $4,500 bond, which is pretty low. And I do understand the outrage here. But we actually talk about this at bearingarms.com. I just wanted to highlight this as well. While the potential federal prison sentence for engaging in a straw buy is 10 years, and the National the National Shooting Sports Foundation has a program in place called Don't Lie for the Other Guy, where gun store owners want to remind would-be customers not to take part in a straw buy. If somebody is trying to put them up to hey, buy me a gun and I'll, give you the money later. I can't buy one because I'm prohibited. They are warning customers, don't do this. There are bad consequences. I think undercutting that message, though, is how the federal government, including the Biden administration, actually treats these straw purchases. Here's a headline from the state of Oklahoma. This was yesterday. Former Tulsa police officer sentenced for lying to gun dealer. So here you have a former law enforcement officer, and at the time, she was active duty. She was on the Tulsa Police Department's force, and she bought a firearm for her boyfriend. Falsely stated that it was for her instead of for her boyfriend. And now LaToya Lisa Dice is looking at 5 years. Not 5 years in prison. 5 years probation. That's what she received. Not a day in federal custody. But 5 years of probation for conspiring to make a false statement to a firearms dealer when buying a pistol. She also has to pay a fine of $1,000. Yeah. Dice pleaded guilty in April to 1 count each of conspiracy to make a false statement to a firearms dealer and to making a false statement to a firearms dealer. She faced up to 5 years in prison for both charges. But again, where are the consequences? She lost her job. That is a consequence. The prosecutor said in a statement, quote, LaToya Dice's choice to illegally purchase a firearm on behalf of another not only ended her career as a Tulsa police officer, but also placed Tulsans at risk. Her attorney, by the way, Shannon McMurray, says her client is, quote, extremely remorseful, plans to work on raising her 2 children and continue her education, saying, quote, when confronted by law enforcement, she immediately admitted to her conduct and accepted responsibility. I have no doubt that Ms. Dice will continue to work hard and live a productive life. Well, I hope that that's the case. I really do. But when you hear gun control advocates talk about, wow, we need all these new gun laws on the books, we need that law over there and that law over there, we need to look at what's happening with the enforcement of the existing laws here. And I would argue that when it comes to enforcing the penalties against straw purchases, sentences like Ms. Dice are actually far more common than somebody getting the maximum sentence of 10 years behind bars. Given the fact that the gun that was purchased in this straw buy in Indiana ended up being used in the commission of a violent crime that led to the death of a Chicago police officer, I highly doubt that sentence is going to end up with solely probation. But frankly, again, if this is a serious crime, then we need to treat it as a serious crime, even when it doesn't result in the death of a law enforcement officer. If, on the other hand, it's not a serious crime, and quite often the federal government does not treat it as if it is a serious crime, then maybe we need to have that conversation about what an appropriate sentence, or should this be a felony level offense at all, if it's not being treated as a felony in many cases. Again, I don't have an easy answer, but considering the talk that we are seeing about straw purchases, I haven't seen much talk about what actually happens when it comes time to sentencing for these crimes. All right, on to today's armed citizen story from San Antonio, Texas. This is a bizarre one. So the headline doesn't really tell the full story here. Yes, a woman did open fire and killed a man, injured 2 others after smashing into a parked car. And police still don't know why this actually happened. It took place about 10 p.m. Wednesday night. This driver was traveling at a high rate of speed, crashed into a parked car, then gets out of her vehicle and starts shooting. The owner of the parked car, who's a guy in his 50s, and 2 others came out to see what had happened. It looks like they came out of a nearby home, and that's when the driver got out of the car and opened fire, hitting all 3 people. According to authorities in San Antonio, another neighbor then heard the gunshots, came out armed with a handgun of his own, and ended up shooting the driver of that vehicle, the gun woman, I guess, the shooter there. Corey Schuler is an officer with the San Antonio Police Department, said it was a significant crash, enough for people to come to the aid and check on the driver's well-being. The driver whose car was hit died at the hospital. 2 others, a teenage boy and a female in her 50s, still in critical condition there. Police don't have a motive for this attack, but, again, who knows how many other people could have been injured. were it not for the quick response of that armed citizen there in San Antonio, Texas, to stop the threat. We will try to keep you updated on any new details or developments in that story. Finally today, our good deed of the day from Glen Falls, New York, where a police officer honored for being in the right place at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing to save the life of a baby who had just stopped breathing. That was back on July the 12th, and Officer Hunter Barton is now, again, being recognized for his life-saving actions. This is a big deal. Barton said Mom was running out into the lawn. She had the infant in her arms, who was dangling and unresponsive. He said, so immediately I ran up to her, I grabbed the infant, I took the little girl from her, I positioned her for back blows, and I performed back blows. Because, infant CPR is somewhat difficult, and it is not quite the same as performing CPR in an adult. Same with the Heimlich maneuver. But those back pats were enough to clear the obstruction in the airway of 3-week-old Lacey Mickle. She was apparently choking on formula. Officer Barton had been on the job for just over a year and a half at that point. And he said that he had also had some real-life practice with someone in his family. But again, in the right place, at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing. Officer Hunter Barton in Glen Falls, New York, we thank you for your very good deed. And that is about all the time we've got for you on this edition of Bearing Arms Cam and Company. I want to thank you, as always, for being a part of the program. While we will not be back with another show until Monday, you can still find the latest Second Amendment news and information at BuriedArms.com. Throughout the weekend, we'll be keeping you updated on any new developments in the nomination of David Chipman. Just a reminder, we've got less than a week now in the public comment period for the redefining of unfinished frames, receivers, readily converted, all of these phrases that the ATF wants to redefine. We'll give you an opportunity at BuriedArms.com. We'll send you the link, or we'll have a story up with the link on how you can publicly comment on those proposed rules throughout the weekend. And I would encourage you, if you haven't already done so, make your voices heard. And we will see you next Monday. Until then, be well, be safe, and be free.